When Your Office Rent is Dragging You Down, episode 48. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Profit with Law. I am your host, Moshe Amsel, and before I jump into this episode, I just want to give you a little bit more of an update on what's going on with our Law Firm Growth Summit. I've been talking about hinting a little bit about it in previous episodes. So I want to start filling you in on what this is all about. So the Law Firm Growth Summit is a virtual conference, and the registration or the attendance is free. My goal with the summit is to be able to provide education to law firm owners on the business side of running a law firm. So the intention is that it's 5 days long, 6 sessions a day, a total of 30 speakers, and absolutely do not expect you to attend 30 sessions, but I do expect that you can look at the list of speakers, the list of sessions, the list of topics, and figure out where are the gaps in your firm that you think, which sessions do you think would be helpful for you. So I'm really excited about the event. It's entirely virtual, which means that you don't need to travel anywhere. And basically, you can attend the sessions at your leisure in your home or your office. When the sessions go live, they're going to be available for 24 hours. If you want it longer than that, there will be a all-access pass that you can buy once you register. But registration is free, and those sessions are available for 24 hours from when they go live. So the 5 days are going to be broken into 5 tracks, and those tracks are marketing, sales, leadership and team development, technology and process implementation, and financials, the financial side of running a law firm. I'm really excited about this setup and this breakdown because it's going to bring you a holistic approach of information that you don't typically find at legal conferences. And I've completely removed the barrier to entry by making it entirely free to attend. And we have our sponsors to thank for that, who are helping us to defray the cost of putting this event on. So I am going to share more information in each episode of some of the behind the scenes and what's going on in preparation for it. Right now, we're getting our speakers all confirmed and ready. We're actively seeking sponsors. We've already attracted a number of track level sponsors. So 4 out of our 5 sponsorship tracks are already sponsored. I'm sorry, 4 out of our 5 tracks, session tracks, are actually already sponsored. And I can't wait to share more information about our sponsors, and we're going to start giving them some shout outs here on the show. We also are going to be getting a little plug on the Lawyerist podcast, which has a wider reach than this podcast does, or a different reach of people who listen to it. So we're excited about that. And we also recently got listed on events.legal. Now, that website is primarily intended for vendors who are looking for sponsorship opportunities at conferences and conference hosts who are looking to collaborate with other conference hosts or vendors. That's the intention of the site. However, it is a great site to go to see what conferences are coming up and where you might want to attend. So we're now listed on events.legal, which is exciting for us. And we also were listed in their newsletter as a featured event. So there's some really exciting things happening. It's really going to happen. The conference is December 16th to December 20th. And stay tuned for more information because we're going to be doing some giveaways, and who doesn't like something for free and who doesn't like winning something. So you can get on the wait list. So registration is not open yet, but if you go to lawfirmgrowthsummit.com, lawfirmgrowthsummit.com, you can put your name and email address in and get on the wait list, and then we will email you the moment that registration opens up, and all you have to do is click through and register. And again, it's just going to cost you your name and email. There is absolutely zero cost to attend. Really, really super excited about this event, and I can't wait to get feedback from you on what you thought about it, what you thought about the session and topic lineup, and what you would have liked to have covered that was not covered. And as a matter of fact, if there's a specific topic that you would love to see covered in this event, it's still early enough that we can try to make that happen for you. So just shoot me an email or send me a message on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram. But you can shoot me an email at mamsal@dreambuilderfinancial.com, and I read all my emails, and I will take a look at it and take it under advisement. I'd love to hear from you where your gaps are and what you would like to see covered. So enough about that. Go to lawfirmgrowthsummit.com, put in your name and email, get on the wait list for the event, and let's jump into today's topic. So in episode 38 of the Profit with Law podcast, we talked about some of the big expenses that a firm has that when we look at it, we could potentially make some significant movement in those expenses, meaning we can reduce those expenses or figure out a way to defray them in some way. So I wanted to spend today talking about rent for your office and just discuss some ideas of some things to think about. So the first thing to think about is your office the right space for your firm? Now, some people have already been very, what is the word I'm looking for? They've been very creative in their office arrangement where they might be sharing an office with other attorneys, sharing resources like expensive copying and printing machine or front desk person or receptionist. Maybe they're sharing paralegals, or maybe they're sharing people in the filing room. So some people are already doing that, but as I'm mentioning this, if you start thinking about it and you're not doing that, it should start triggering some thought processes for you. So it's no secret that as a law firm grows, the number one expense that they have is payroll, and the number two expense that they have is rent. And these are expenses that are big, and they happen every single month. And these big nuts are what most law firm owners tend to struggle with. In other words, you've got to pay your rent on the first of the month or whenever it's due, right, each month, and you got to pay payroll on its cycle, whether it's 2 weeks, 1 week, twice a month, once a month. When that cycle comes around, you got to pay your employees, you got to pay them on time. And these deadlines with no grievance or no way to avoid them or skip them are very serious deadlines, and they cause a lot of loss of sleep in law firm owners. So let's just take a look at your decision to get into the office that you're in right now. How did you go about making that decision? Now, there's all kinds of factors such as location, size, aesthetics. What does it look like? What does it portray about you and your firm as far as where it's located or what it looks like? And, is it modern? Is it old and dilapidated? And the list goes on, but those are the kinds of things that you look at when you're getting an office. Now, I would invite you to take a step even further back. And you might be stuck in a lease and you're thinking, well, there's no point in doing this exercise. And there really is a point in doing the exercise, and I'll explain to you why. And that is whenever I look at a big decision and I'm trying to figure out which way do I go, I find the most clarity in assuming that I don't have anything already in place. What would be my ideal situation? What would be the thing that I would love to do? So I would invite you to think about whether you even would need an office if you started to think about it. Now, there are certain practice areas and there are certain business models that require you to have a physical space for clients to come and meet with you, for you to have your employees nearby. However, in today's day and age, the office environment is getting more and more fragmented, and even corporate America is providing employees the ability to work from home. They're even, in some cases, giving incentives for employees to work from home, and they're paying them extra to work from home because it saves them on the cost of their office space. So I would start to challenge you to think about whether or not you have the ability to run your practice with less people in-house, less people in the office. And I don't mean on staff. I just mean physically present in the office, because you could have your paralegals working remotely. You could have even your receptionist, if you don't need a front door greeter, can work remotely. And as a matter of fact, we had Maddie Martin from Smith AI on the podcast just last week, and she talked about the idea of having a virtual reception service to fill in the gap or to completely replace the person that's answering your phone right now. And they all operate completely remotely, yet they're able to completely participate in the law firm. They're able to access the cloud practice management software. They're able to input information in there, and they're able to even answer your phones. So as we live in this environment of, all of our files being stored on the cloud and our practice and basically all of our software that we're using is being provided as a service to us and delivered through the cloud, anybody with an internet connection should be able to work from anywhere. Now, obviously, there's security concerns, and you have to cover that, and that has to be part of the decision-making process. But the first thing that I would ask you to do is to go back and in your mind and think about, okay, if I didn't have this office, if I didn't have my setup the way that it was, and I was starting from scratch today with today's technology and capabilities and what I know now about running my firm, would I need an office at all, or would I have people work remotely and run a virtual practice? That is the first step that I would have you take. And then once you decide that you need an in-person presence, I would again ask you to ask how extensive that presence needs to be. Does it need to be just one person there to man the store, basically? Or, or do you just need a physical place to meet with clients and, meet around a conference table, but otherwise you would be virtual? These are important questions to start asking, because it opens up a whole plethora of options as far as what kinds of office space you need. So, for example, if everybody's working virtual, but you need a physical presence with a conference room that you can meet with clients, well, you can go to Regis, WeWork, any of those companies that offer shared office spaces where you can simply get a desk or even just get a membership there without a desk and just have access to their conference room. And you just need to make sure that you're booking it in advance. And that's going to, that costs money. But when you start to compare that to the cost of an entire office, it pales in comparison. And that could be definitely a perfectly good working solution. Now, if you can't operate in a virtual environment, or you need more than a few desks, now those shared office spaces like WeWork and Regis and those kind, typically up until 4 people, although they're expensive, they're actually worth it because you're not requiring additional space. And what happens is when you go looking for an office and you need 4 desks, you're going to think in your mind, well, what if I need to hire a 5th person? Then I got to go through this whole thing again. So now you're starting to get space that is even bigger than that in hopes or in anticipation of the growth of your firm, which may be on the ball, but in the meantime, you may be paying for all that extra space for a period of time, and you don't know how long that period is. So it could be 6 months, but it could also be 2 or 3 years. So I'm not a big fan of paying for office space that you're not going to be using. It's going to be sitting idle. Now, there are other solutions to that. So let's say that you do want to get your own space, but you don't want to leave yourself restricted as far as the growth within the space. Well, you could get space that's even larger and simply rent out that space to other businesses, whether it's attorneys or whether it's other professionals. Obviously, you want to have somebody who's in a professional services capacity so that you're not needing to deal with anything else, like retail or customers coming in, a lot of foot traffic. You don't want to deal with any of that, but you can definitely share an office with an accountant, with a therapist, there's all kinds of professionals that would just need a single office or a couple of offices, or, and maybe even be interested in sharing a receptionist or at least paying a fee to have your receptionist greet their clients and their visitors at the front door. So if you need to get space that is larger than you need, I would invite you to start to think about how you can cover the cost of that space and not be eating it the entire time that you're waiting for your firm to grow. Because guess what? When you're pouring that money into your rent, you're not going to be able to grow your firm because you're not going to be able to hire the next person. That $2,000 that's going to the building could be paying your receptionist, your full-time receptionist, or that $3,000 or $4,000 that you're paying extra in rent for the bigger space could be going to pay for your paralegal or your part-time or your contract work. Maybe a part-time paralegal and a part-time receptionist, or outsourced to outside services. So again, the amount of money that you spend on wasted space could be deployed in a much better way to help your firm grow. So it's a very poor use of your cash flow and your assets to tie it up that way. And then the other thing is that I would look at the cost comparison of a shared space or renting within somebody else's office versus having your own space. And then the other thing that I would look at is the location and the aesthetics of the place. So, I fortunately / unfortunately have had clients that were paying a significant amount of money for their rent, specifically to be in a certain building in a certain place, and whether it's in prime real estate in Manhattan, or other examples where, maybe it's a very well-trafficked professional building where they're hoping to get walk-in traffic as far as clients go. But unless you're tracking that information, unless you have solid data to know that you're going to get a certain amount of business from the fact that you're located there, that's a very risky bet to be taking. And sometimes you could be paying astronomically more. I mean, we could be talking about, hundreds of dollars per square foot more, depending on where it is, and also how updated the space is. Like when a building puts money into major renovations, they're passing that money on to the tenants. In other words, they're raising the rent because they've upgraded the building. So you pay a premium for having a nicer space, for having a more modernized space, for having a space that's in a particularly desirable building. And I would definitely start to look, instead of just emotionally of what you want, because that's typically how that decision is made. Now start to look at that decision from a business owner point of view. And that is, will this drive my top line? Will it drive sales? Will it get people to become my customer? Or can I do the same in a cheaper space? And I guarantee you that in 90%, I just made that number up, but probably in 90% of the cases, you would not be able to demonstrate an ROI, a true return on investment of the money outlaid for any benefit that has a direct financial connection to money coming into the firm because of your choice of space. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about getting a space in a place that's a dump and when you walk in, there's rats scurrying around, within reason. Okay. So we're talking about a building that just might not be as updated, but it's still a professional building. It's still a professional place to have your office. It doesn't even have to be a building. It could be a house. It could be, which leads us to another thing, which is potentially a home office. So as you think about these things, I just want you to, more than anything else, just keep an open mind, right? Because if you really start to think about it and pay attention to your internal emotional state, because a lot of this decision is determined emotionally, and it shouldn't be. Your emotions should have nothing to do with this decision, because this decision is long-term. This is something that's going to potentially bleed cash out of your law firm for years to come, versus making a more frugal decision and figuring out how to make that work and really setting yourself up for success. So I'm not saying that if you get a fancy office, you're going to fail. That's not my intention or my message. There's plenty of law firms that are quite successful that have very, very nice offices. And that, at the same time, when you think about that, you think about, well, is that how you define success for you? Is that how you define whether you've made it? Because when people walk in, they can see the name of your law firm over the receptionist's desk, and glass walls, or a really fancy conference room table. These are the kinds of things that really don't make a difference except to your ego, except to your emotional state, except to your feeling good. But start to think about, why does that make you feel good? It's because of the way that you look to others. And if you make decisions in business based on what others are going to think about you, then you're destined to struggle. I'm not going to say you're destined to fail, because there's plenty of ways to succeed even with making these kinds of mistakes. But you're destined to struggle along your way if that's how you're making decisions, and that's how you're looking at yourself, your firm, and your life is, what are others going to think? So it's a very poor place to be making decisions from. Instead, what you should be making decisions from is, why did I start this law firm in the first place? Who was I trying to serve? What was I trying to build? And chances are your goals have nothing to do with whether or not other people think that you've made it. And chances are that your goals have a lot more to do with how much time you have to spend on your family and your hobbies. What kind of future you can provide for your children and your grandchildren based on your income, and building up a firm that maybe has value to be able to be sold when you're ready to retire. Probably you had some sort of reason for getting into the justice system in the first place. You probably have an agenda, an ethical agenda, a moral agenda, a righteous agenda, where you want to make some level of impact in the world. And that's why you're an attorney in the first place. That's why you became a lawyer. So chances are that when you started your firm, the real reason for starting the firm had to do with your financial well-being, had to do with your personal well-being, your health, and your impact on the world, and your ability to effectuate change or help people in their lives in different ways. So when you look at it from that perspective, now you start looking at your office as one of the tools to get there instead of a badge of honor. Now you can start to recognize that it's really so insignificant, whether it's fancy or not, whether it's big or not. And now you can go back to the basics and start to look at, what is it that I really need? So the last thing I want to cover on this episode is, What if you're already in a space? You've already leased it. You're already in a space. The space is too expensive. It's too fancy. It's too, it was a mistake. You recognize it was a mistake, but you're in there for the long haul. You've signed a 10-year lease and you're 3 years into it. So you got 7 years to go. So you have a few options. And obviously this depends on what the lease allows. But one option that you have is to and we mentioned it earlier, is to basically sublet or sublease some of the space to other professionals. And that's a really, really good option to, have other attorneys come in who are not competing with you and set up shop in your office, where now they have a presence that is professional, that they're proud of, and they're happy to pay you for their spot, where they couldn't get an office like that by themselves. And there could be shared resources, which you're already paying for, which could make it even more exciting and even better. But just remember that this is not a new business model for you. This is not a place for you to try to make a profit from. Now, it's quite possible that might be the case, that when you look at the square footage of what you're paying and you're able to mark it up higher than that for somebody coming in for a small piece of it, you technically could be making money on it, but that wouldn't be my goal. My goal would be to just help defray the cost of a decision you already made that perhaps was not the best decision, and now you're just trying to cut your losses. And that's really the place that I think that you should come from when you approach this, because it will make sense for you to settle with somebody who, maybe is not paying you exactly what you want to get for it, just to be able to have that cash coming in. So that's the first thing. The second thing is look at your options as far as breaking the lease. What would it cost you to break the lease? And look at your options for another place. So if it's going to cost you $30,000 to break the lease, but you could find an office in maybe an older building that's perfectly suitable, it's just not as nicely updated as the one that you're in, and you're going to save $3,000 a month. Well, that $30,000 to break the lease is paid off in a year of that $3,000 savings, and now by year 2, you have an extra $3,000 of cash wiggle room. So that would be well worth it. So what's the rule of thumb as far as how long is worth it? What's the payoff? Well, that really depends on your own projections of the firm, but typically 18 to 24 months is a no-brainer in the business world. Up to 36 months is probably still worthwhile, depending on how long you have left on your lease, obviously. So if the return is, after 3 years and you only have 3 years and 3 months left on the lease, then that would be silly. You may as well stay in the office and enjoy that space for the next 3 years for the cost of that 3 months extra expenditure. Because you also, and on top of that, you also don't know precisely what's going to happen down the road. So, you don't want to back yourself into a corner. But if the financials make sense, if you're going to have 5 years of saving $3,000 a month, that's between $150,000 and $200,000 of savings over the course of 5 years. That adds up to a lot of money. I mean, that could be your kid's college tuition, right? Or whatever. That could be your beach house. It can, there's a lot of different ways to spend that money, but spending it on office space is probably not the right one. So in summary, there are a lot of options that you have. You have to be willing to think about it this way. You have to be willing to be open-minded about it. And if you're not, then you're simply going to chalk this episode up to being a waste of a half hour of your time. And I totally understand that and appreciate that. However, for many of you listening to this, you're going to start thinking about what it is that that's important to you, and it goes well beyond the rent. So you can start using the same logic to think about the other things in your office. Do you have a high-end copier that you've leased that you're paying every month for, where you could just as well get away with a sheet-fed scanner and some printers around the office, which are significantly less expensive? You start thinking about this in many different areas where you just tried to be like the big boys, or you tried to just make yourself look really good or feel good that now you've got this thing, and really, it's not the most cost-effective way to get the job done in your space. So think about that, and I hope that this was helpful. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, we've got that virtual summit coming up. It's really exciting. It's going to be a lot of great information. So don't wait. You might be driving right now. That's fine. You might be in the shower. Some people listen to the podcast in the shower. You might be running. But if you're in a position where you're able to write this down or pause or just open a web browser and go there, just go to lawfirmgrowthsummit.com and put in your name and your email address. Get on the wait list, and I can't wait to share all of those sessions with you and all that information. And until next time, let's make some really good decisions, and let's do things to increase our top line, decrease our expenses, increase our bottom line, and start to bring home some more profit and start to free up some time, and free up some energy, and start to effectuate changes in our lives to make our firm start producing for us the way that we intended when we set out to start it. So I hope this was helpful. Have a wonderful day. See you guys on Thursday with another great interview coming up. Have you been enjoying the show? We sure hope so. To make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app. Next week, we will be back with more valuable resources and ideas on how to break the mold and take your law firm to the next level.